All right, guys, so continuing on with Donald Trump's incredibly suspicious self-implosion over the Epstein files, I'm going to run you through some of the latest on what he's been saying over the last couple of days. Then we're going to get to Alex Jones, of all people, who seems to be completely fed up at this point and is actually turning on Donald Trump now. And then we're going to finish off with some of the latest polling data in terms of how the American people feel about all of this. So here to start us off, we have Donald Trump over on his Truth Social account, where he said the radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. Just like the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, the lying 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, etc., etc., the scams and hoaxes are all the Democrats are good at. It's all they have. He says their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. So he's saying the Epstein files don't exist. There's no further questions that need to be asked. Nobody else is implicated in any of this. This is all a Democrat-run scam and a hoax. And if you think otherwise, you are a past supporter. I'm ditching you. You're no longer welcome in the coalition. This is what he's saying. He continues. He says they haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the left, the lunatic left, for 8 long years. I've had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history, and all these people want to talk about with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Dems is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success because I don't want their support anymore. So he is going full on. If you talk about this, you are no longer in my coalition. You're out. There's no more questions that need to be answered. There's no more files that are going to be released. This is done. Shut up about it. And if you don't, you're just part of the Democrat scammers and hoaxers, I guess. This is what he's rolling with at this point. Now, we also had this statement here where he said, I'm not going to play the clip because it's out on the tarmac and it's incredibly hard to hear, but he said, I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. I think really only pretty bad people, including the fake news, want to keep something like that going. So now he's saying it's boring, it's not interesting. I don't know why anybody would be interested in the largest child sex trafficking ring in American history that implicates the most powerful and wealthy people in this country and around the world. Don't know why anybody would be interested in any of that. But if you are interested in it, you're a bad person. Not only are you part of the Democrat scammers and hoaxers and a weakling as well, but you're also just a bad person if you have further questions about this. And by the way, on the tarmac next to him is this guy over here, who you can see sort of laughing along as he's saying all of this. This is Howard Lutnick, right? Very wealthy billionaire, part of the Trump administration, who also happens to be Jeffrey Epstein's former neighbor. Interesting. I mean, literally laughing in our faces about all of this. Now, we also had this statement when he was doing an interview on Real America's Voice, where he says the FBI ought to look into the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Not the FBI should look into the Jeffrey Epstein files and then release that to the American people in whatever capacity they can. No, he's saying they should look into the hoax of Jeffrey Epstein and the files. He says that was run by the Biden administration for 4 years. I can't imagine what they put into the files. Now, taking everything that we just heard, right, in the first statement that he put out here on Truth Social, talking like this, and then saying, I can't imagine what they put into the files. I'm genuinely trying to come up with any alternative plausible explanation for why the president would be talking like this and would be so aggressive and hostile towards anybody who has questions about this and would be saying they're planting evidence on me, unless you were trying to beat a story, unless you were trying to lay the groundwork for if anything ever comes out about this, and it directly implicates me, then no, it doesn't, because all of this shit is fake news and it was planted here by Obama and Clinton and Biden and whoever else. I mean, how else could you possibly read in to this kind of a statement? I mean, he says, I can't imagine what they've put into the files, which, by the way, I thought the Epstein files didn't really even exist, right? Wasn't Pam Bondi saying the other day, like, there's no client list, there's nothing else to see here, there's no possible charges we could bring against anybody else who could have been involved in this, it's wrapped, it's done, there's nothing else to see. But now he's saying, no, the files do exist, and not only that, but the implication here is, in all likelihood, I'm in the files, and so I'm going to get ahead of this by saying, if I'm in the files, somebody else put it there, and it's not organic, and you can't trust it. I legitimately don't know any other way to look into this kind of a statement. I mean, if you guys have something, let me know down in the comments. We continue. Two more things, and then we'll get to Alex Jones. He was in this meeting in the White House Oval Office talking about trade deals and stuff. Obviously, questions were asked by the reporters in the crowd. And his answer to one of these was, that is the scandal that they should be talking about, not Jeffrey Epstein. The scandal you should be talking about is the auto pen scandal. This is what they've been trying to push, I guess, as an attempt to distract away from the Epstein files. We have this over on Fox News as well. From this commentator, he says, if you care about the Constitution and rule of law, the president is right. The auto pen is way more serious than Jeffrey Epstein. Guys, what they're referring to here is, I guess, like this allegation that Joe Biden, right? The idea is like, he wasn't really mentally there, which, okay, fair enough. That's true. We all saw his cognitive decline. But the idea is like he wasn't really there during his administration, and they use this auto pen to basically automatically sign his signature on various things. And so he wasn't really the president. There were other people who were using his signature to get certain things signed, like the pardons towards the end of his administration or whatever. They're trying to claim that that scandal is bigger than the cover-up of the largest child sex trafficking ring and possible blackmail operation backed by intelligence agencies, if you want to go that far, that's a bigger story than the Jeffrey Epstein story. The auto pen scandal. I mean, usually Republicans, usually Trump especially, are pretty good at coming up with new distractions to lead people away from whatever they don't want them to be talking about. This is the weakest example of that I've ever seen from Donald Trump. The auto pen. You think people are going to rally behind the auto pen from the Biden administration as the big scandal? That wouldn't even be top 10 in terms of scandals that we should be talking about under the current Trump administration. Now, we continue. We also had this here pointed out by CNN. There was a reporter who said, President Trump, would you consider appointing a special counsel to investigate the Jeffrey Epstein investigation? So to get like sort of an independent third-party analysis of whether or not Pam Bondi is telling the truth on all of this. And he says, I have nothing to do with it. Now, that's important because that was some of the cope that we were seeing from conservatives who were still defending Trump. And they were saying, no, this isn't over. You know, there's more to come. He's going to appoint a special counsel and we're going to get more in the future. No, he's saying, we're not doing that. I have nothing to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about. Right. Now, with all of that being said, we move on to Alex Jones. So let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this first thing here where he responds to that initial Truth Social post that we just read through.
You know what, Trump? I'm glad the Democrats aren't in, and I like a lot of the success you're having, and we're all having together. And your statements about, you know, you people that bring this up don't even deserve to be involved in this movement. You are excommunicata. You are henceforth ex cathedra from the mouth of the God King. You are expelled from the church of the holy golden toad, Donald John Trump. Well, I was never in the church of the holy golden toad. I do like you being a maverick, standing up for the country. We have the same enemies. I respect your stamina and courage. Been a big cheerleader when I agree with what you're doing. But if I'm being excommunicated, let me be clear, I was never in your church to be excommunicated. So you can't excommunicate me because I was never in your church. I was never in a cult. I never said MAGA was a cult. I said a lot of people want it to be a cult. You know, there are Dallas Cowboy fans that are in a cult and literally commit suicide if they lose, you know, the playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys isn't a cult, but there are people that have made a cult out of it.
Okay, so we can go ahead and finish off there. Lost me a little bit with the Dallas Cowboys analogy, but he says, I'm not in your cult. I'm not going to go along with this. You know, if you say that I'm excommunicado, then I'm excommunicado. Okay, that's that, right? We're not going to drop the Epstein stuff. So that's Alex Jones' position on this. Now, in terms of whether or not MAGA actually is a cult, I'm going to show you some polling data at the end of this video, so stick around, that kind of definitively proves that to a large extent it is. Now, there are some people who are breaking away from Trump and they're critical of him, but for the most part, his hardcore base is basically not concerned about this as an issue. And we've covered some of the different various, coping and seething from people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and others who want this story to go away. On the other hand, you do have some conservatives here, like Matt Walsh, I guess. He disagrees with Trump on this. This is what he said. He said the administration invited influencers to the White House, handed them binders that said Epstein Files Phase 1. And it also said, by the way, when they gave these influencers those binders, underneath was a quote that said, the most transparent administration in American history. So where are we at on that? But he says they also staged a photo op outside with the binders. Now Trump calls the whole thing a dumb hoax. There is no way for an honest person to look at this set of facts and come away with the conclusion that the administration is right on the issue. So again, you do have some resistance to this. You do have some breakaway. I do think that this will form some sort of a split within the MAGA movement, but how significant is that going to be? Well, again, we'll look at some polling data here in a second. A couple more things here though. We had posted here from Ron Wyden, who got access to this. He says, big news from his investigators on Epstein's sex trafficking operation. The Trump administration has an Epstein file detailing 4,725 wire transfers that are in the Trump administration's hands and almost $1.1 billion flowing through just one of his many banks. Hundreds of millions flowed through others. So the important part of the Epstein story, to be clear, is not just the sex trafficking, right? That's obviously a massive core component of all of this. But the other component is the money in terms of how did Jeffrey Epstein get so filthy rich? How did he get himself into key positions around, very powerful people and institutions and intelligence agencies? And how did he have all of these different various connections? This is a massive part of this story that we know next to nothing about in terms of how he accumulated the kind of wealth that he did. And where was this money coming from? And where was it going to, right? These are unanswered questions that the Trump administration, apparently according to Ron Wyden here, has files on. Are they going to release the information on exactly what was going on with these billions of dollars that Jeffrey Epstein had at his disposal without any real explanation as to how he was able to function like this? Of course not, because here we had just yesterday, Republicans blocking a vote to release the Epstein files. They did this twice in two different ways, one with a smaller, cohort as Ro Khanna was trying to introduce an amendment, and then they had a general vote on it. And I think every single Republican voted against releasing the files except for one, and then every single Democrat voted in favor of releasing the files. So I don't know what else to say about this at this point, right? I mean, it seems pretty clear that there was an order from on high from Donald Trump that you got to vote to block this, right? And they fell in line. Now, again, moving on to the polling data here in terms of how the American people feel about this. Well, here from Polling USA, a YouGov poll from just 3 days ago, the question is, do you think the government is covering up evidence it has about Epstein? 67% say yes. Only 8% say no. And you can look at the breakdown there between parties. For Democrats, 82% think there's a cover-up. Independents, 69% think there's a cover-up. And Republicans, 50% think that there is a cover-up. We also had this one here from Ken Klippenstein. A new poll finds that only 3% of Americans are satisfied with the amount of info released on the Jeffrey Epstein case. Similar numbers of likely Republicans, 43%, as likely Democrats, 60%, report feeling dissatisfied. And here from Harry Yenton, he says, you rarely see this kind of agreement. 3% are satisfied with the handling of the Epstein files. We also had this here from Rasmussen polling, which obviously is a very conservative polling outlet. And you can see that Trump's approval does seem to be cratering, at least in his second term compared to all of these other ones. You can look on the graph there for yourself. But in his second term, it seems like he's getting close to bottoming out at this point. Now, one final one here, again, answering the question as to whether or not MAGA is a cult, or at least a sizable portion of them are in a cult. Here we have from CNN, again, Harry Yenton. Republicans who approve of Trump, according to the CNN poll, the prior one was 86%, and the one out this week, amidst all of this Epstein stuff, is 88%. In Quinnipiac, the prior poll was 87%, and now it's up to 90%. He says, if anything, Donald Trump's approval rating has gone up since this Epstein saga started. he is at the apex or close to in terms of his popularity with Republican voters. So I don't know. What would you guys call that? When a guy can repeatedly spit in your face, can go back on everything that he promises, can lie to you repeatedly over and over and over again, can enact policies that are directly against your material interests, and his approval rating goes up with that group of people. What would you call that? I think it's a cult. I think it's a cult. Now, again, you have some exceptions here and there, but overwhelmingly, they are standing in line with him. So listen, guys, I mean, my conclusion to all of this is still the same. I never thought the Epstein files were going to be released. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, was supposedly Jeffrey Epstein's best friend for over 10 years. This is a guy who we have literally hundreds of pictures of him with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is a guy who clearly knew at least something about Epstein's sexual proclivities, let's call it that, given that he said, yeah, I know Jeffrey Epstein. I've known him for a long time. He likes them young. Right? This is a guy who has so many connections with Jeffrey Epstein that if we were to get access to the full Epstein files, his name would probably come up more than any other person on earth. So, I mean, it's not a surprise that the files have not come out. And I think you might be kind of a rube. You might be kind of an idiot at this point if you thought that they were genuinely going to come out. So obviously we didn't think that that was actually going to happen. But at the end of the day, guys, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the most notorious sex trafficker in American history. We're talking about a large-scale child sex trafficking ring that implicates potentially how many countless, billionaires and politicians and celebrities and academics from the United States and all over the world, and also, in all likelihood, implicates U.S. intelligence agencies, Israeli intelligence agencies. I mean, this is a massive, massive story here that has drastically important implications. So, I mean, this is the largest cover-up that I've seen within my entire lifetime, right? It's one of the largest cover-ups that we've seen in American history, and it's not even a good one. It's not even a good one. I mean, you look back to the memo that Pam Bondi put out, and she's listing off the stats of this is how many different videos that we have. We have over 1,000 victims. And then she says, but there's no evidence that we could possibly use to bring anybody else to justice outside of Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently in prison, and Jeffrey Epstein, who is dead by, his own hands, apparently, in jail. Even though, by the way, that video, we had an update. I didn't include it in this, but we got an update on the jail cell video that they put out that was edited down by a minute. It actually turns out that it was edited down by 3 minutes. And obviously was exported in Adobe Premiere, and Wired covered all the details surrounding the potential edits within that supposedly unedited video that they put out to disprove the idea that it was possible he didn't off himself in prison. But I mean, again, it's like they're not even trying. They're really not even trying. They think you're stupid. They're literally laughing in our faces. And Donald Trump wants this to go away, but at the same time, every single statement that he puts out about it makes it more incriminating. It makes it more suspicious that, hang on a sec, like, okay, maybe I didn't before think that, you were directly involved in the real shady stuff that Epstein was doing, but now I kind of do. Right now, I think more and more that you might be, because why else would you be saying that there's stuff planted in the files? Why else would you be saying that anybody who talks about this is a Democratic hoaxer and a scammer and a weakling who I don't want as part of my coalition? I mean, he is in full-blown panic mode about this. Full-blown panic mode about this. And so the question is, why? Why? Right? What are we missing here? Obviously, again, it's either to cover up something directly implicating himself, or it's to cover up something directly implicating U.S. intelligence or Israeli intelligence, or some combination of the both. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Unfortunately for Trump, I don't think that this is going anywhere anytime soon. So the crash out is, in all likelihood, going to continue.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying